Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We are in the festive season and I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. If you are a returning subscriber to this channel, I want to say a big thank you to you for your love and your support for the channel. Continue to like, share, and share your thoughts in the comment section. And also, if you are a newcomer on this channel, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. And I say thank you for choosing to watch this channel and the content on this channel. And before you leave, please, in the spirit of the festivity, in the spirit of celebration, and in the spirit of love, please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share. For this is why we are here to give you updates, because when you also click on that notification bell, whenever I put up a content, you will be notified. Thank you so much for your love and your support. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I am all smiling because we are in the festive season. If you are a Christian watching this channel, you know what we are celebrating during this season. And any other faith, I know they are celebrating Christmas as well in their own respective ways. But I just want to talk today about something very important about the Ambazonian War of Revolution. There's been a lot that has been said about the Ambazonian Revolution, but today I really have come to expose the atrocities that Cameroon has been committing within Ambazonia for the last 62, 61 years. Ladies and gentlemen, the war is being misled by a regime that has mastered the art of playing victim while perpetrating crimes of unimaginable or unimaginable brutality in Ambazonia. Cameroon stands at global platforms such as the United Nations, claiming to be a victim of aggression. A victim of aggression, ladies and gentlemen. But we all know that here are lies, the lies of Cameroon. Today, I have come to tell the truth about the brutality of Cameroon, the atrocities of Cameroon that have been committed in the past 7-8 years in Ambazonia, and those that were committed even before now. We all know that Cameroon sits or they chair the United Nations General Assembly during this time. And we are also aware that last week, we also witnessed Cameroon sitting at the Convention Against Torture, that is a CAT committee, answering questions on torture that has been happening in Cameroon both. And a lot of concerns were raised during that particular hearing. And today we are going to bring out more of those, even though I've tweeted a lot about what was said during the CAT committee that held in Geneva. So, but here, ladies and gentlemen, lies the truth the world must know. Like I said, today I've come to expose the truth. Cameroon is not a victim. I really wish that people can get this straight in their minds. Cameroon is not a victim. The people of Ambazonia are the victims. Cameroon remains a dictator. Cameroon remains the oppressor of the people of Ambazonia. And you will see all of this in this particular video. In Ambazonia, the story is one of relentless genocide, state-sponsored terrorism, and systematic extermination. That is what happens in Ambazonia. The United Nations Committee Against Torture, as we mentioned earlier, has confirmed what we have long known, that Cameroon's military is engaging in acts of torture, extrajudicial execution, mass killings, and the destruction of entire villages. The CAT report details countless atrocities, including enforced disappearances, gender-based violence, and the use of heavy weaponry on civilian population in Ambazonia. This is not just a human rights crisis, it is a genocide. For the last 7 to 8 years, we've recorded more than 30,000 killed, Ambazonians killed in cold and brutal blood. We have registered more than 470 villages razed to the ground by military in Ambazonia. We have registered more than 1.3 to 1.4 million internally displaced persons and those that have are seeking refugees or have fled the country to neighboring countries like Nigeria, Chad, and other countries. Equatorial Guinea, sorry. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening in Ambazonia is not just a human rights crisis. It is an outright genocide. And we will see more of this as we go into hearings of honorable members of the Cameroon parliament that are criticizing the work of military within Ambazonia. Cameroon's military has been allowed to act with impunity within Ambazonia, killing thousands of civilians and displacing millions. Like I said, over 270 villages have been erased from existence. They've been razed to the ground. More than 130,000 or 180,000 Ambazonian refugees now languishing in camps in Nigeria, mostly in the Cross River State and other parts of Nigeria.
Mr. Contesse, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good that we still have some time so we can actually continue the conversation with the delegation. I appreciate Mr. Kessing for reiterating the question of military courts, military jurisdiction that was not answered. I'm also missing an answer on the question of the optional protocol. To fully understand what's happening, it's been 14 years, and Cameroon has the chance to lead. The president of the General Assembly is from Cameroon, and that's a motive of celebration. Cameroon should be leading the way by fully ratifying and enforcing UPCAD. It has a Human Rights Commission, so it has a dedicated place that could be the National Preventive Mechanism. So we would like to fully understand what's happening with that delay. And two more things. One is, I didn't mean to say that I just found in Google. No, these are articles published in Voice of America, 29 April 2022, signed by a journalist, Moki Edwin Kinzeka. An article, same date, in News Central TV, signed by another journalist. And the third article that I just found in Cameroon Concord News, 11 November 2019, signed by two journalists. These are not anonymous sources. These are media sources. And so it's important that the state party be able to assess what's happening and investigate what is happening here. And final point.
I'm going to revert to Spanish. I understand the distinction that's being made. Again, I thank you for your clarity in explaining the distinction between correctional activities and criminal activities in the judicial system. And I'm not a specialist in Cameroonese law. And the delays have to do with ensuring that all of the parties are enjoying due process. That's something that is required of all states. All states. That is to say, all states that are parties to the Convention Against Torture. What's key here is that the delegation of the state can inform the committee, can report to the committee, because the committee has asked for specific information on specific cases. And what are the results of those specific judicial investigations, and not in the abstract?
Entendiendo el artículo 4.
Understanding Article 4 of the Criminal Procedural Code, 315, no, not in the abstract, paragraphs 11, 12, 19, and 20 of the concluding observations of the Fifth Periodic Review, or the Fifth Periodic Report. Paragraph 20 in the list of issues prior to reporting. In these texts, the committee requested specific information on specific victims with name and surname. It is in this context, in this dialogue, that we've talked about some high-profile cases. But what's really important here is really to look at what happens with cases of individuals that are not high-profile individuals, people that are not well-known. And the committee is not a tribunal. It could be that there's no order from the state to commit torture. We haven't said that there was, but we do have information of individuals that have been subjected to torture and ill treatment as defined by the convention, and that, hence, as explained by my colleague, Mr. Ruan, the state has a duty under the convention to undertake due diligence. And that's what we're asking about. What are the measures that the state of Cameroon is taking in order to ensure within the framework of due process that these investigations are conducted and concluded?
Como digo, para no decirlo acá.
So, we have all the information here in paragraph 20. In the yellow list of issues prior to reporting, we see the lists of names of individuals. And this is my last comment for right now. The ambassador said at the outset that there is no one that is more criticized than the president in Cameroon. That happens in any constitutional democracy. The authorities are exposed to a greater level of criticism, not less criticism. The source of concern of the committee is that in the cases that we discussed yesterday, what they all have in common, what the victims have in common, is that all of them criticized the administration in Cameroon. This isn't a trial here. That's in the hands of the state. But they are influencers, they are journalists, they are individuals that have used their platforms to criticize the administration. It could just be a mere coincidence. But if there's not due diligence, if there are not investigations looking into who is responsible for that, we don't have any way of knowing. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Heard from the CAT committee, and I'll be posting the link at the description of this video so you can go and read the full report that was published by the United Nations CAT committee, so that you will have an understanding of the level of atrocities committed by Cameroon within Ambazonia. Thousands of our people are now internally displaced. Not thousands, millions, as a matter of fact. Millions, because we've seen recorded millions of people suffering internal displacement and in need of increased humanitarian assistance. We have all of these records. Women and children. Women, children, and the elderly are not spared. We have seen the recordings of Mami Api, who was burned to death in her house. We've seen Mami Felicia. We've seen Pa Epang. We've seen a lot of our elderly persons killed and then burned to death in their homes. This is what Cameroon military does within Ambazonia. And the records are there to prove it. Sometimes they don't believe what we say on the social media. They want international reputable organizations to speak. And I'm happy that the CAT committee came out and exposed Cameroon's brutality and atrocities in Ambazonia. Hospitals that are supposed to serve as safe haven are brutally burned to ashes. Hospitals have become militarized zones where even doctors and nurses face threats of offering to care for the wounded. Nurses in Ambazonia, we've seen many that have been arrested, tortured for giving attention or treating wounded Ambazonians. Whether they are soldiers or they are civilians, the duty of a doctor or a nurse is to attend to the needs of someone that is wounded. They have no right to discriminate whether they are an Ambazonia or not, because Cameroon military men goes to the same hospital, they give them treatment. So Cameroon military stays there and prohibit nurses and doctors from giving treatment to wounded persons. Civilians come in and die because they claim everybody in Ambazonia who is wounded is a military, is an Ambazonian fighter, is a freedom fighter. Women and children die on a daily basis for lack of medical attention because Cameroon military, they've kept their spies in the hospital to monitor anybody that comes in with a wound. Forgetting that Cameroon military, they go on a killing spree in Ambazonia and bullets are flying left, right, center, and people get caught by stray bullets and get wounded during arson attacks in their communities and calais and random arrests and torture, and all of these things happen within the territory. And yet, everybody that is wounded, whether by accident or by any means whatsoever, they prevent them from receiving treatment because they call them amber fighters, and they violate international laws to whom they are signatories to these conventions. Are not crimes alone. These are war crimes, plain and simple. These are war crimes, yet the war remains silent. That is the most painful part of it. As our people suffer, as our people go through this ache, pain, traumatization, psychological trauma, physical torments, and all of this, the war remains silent and claim there is nothing happening in Ambazonia. But we have all seen that this is not just ordinary attacks on civilians, but these are acts of genocides, extrajudicial killing, crimes against humanity, war crimes, as described by the Geneva Conventions. What is happening within Ambazonia? Ministry has been allowed to act with impunity. And this is what they do. Because the war keeps silence, it gives them a license to kill. They kill at sight, they point and shoot. At point blank, they kill, they don't care. The same military that is supposed to protect civilians is the same military that kills within Ambazonia. And this is sponsored by different countries of the world, especially France. Because Cameroon is one of France's puppets in Africa. It does what France says. What Emmanuel Macron says is what happens in Cameroon. And when he says, go and kill without looking back, they go and kill. We all remember Honorable Joseph Wirba, a courageous, brave Ambazonian who was a parliamentarian within La République Parliament, an SDF parliamentarian, the opposition party in Cameroon. Honorable Wirba spoke up about the brutality of the military elements, especially the bees that are sent within Ambazonia, how they rape, they maim, they kill our people, they attack, they burn down communities, they maim. And when he brought out the atrocities committed by these bees within the territory, they haunted him for months and months and months until he has to run for his life and now taking refuge in the United Kingdom. A member of the parliament, he raised concerns of the act of the military within Ambazonia. He sounded the alarm and called on the government to look into what was happening in Ambazonia, but they called him arrogant. And because Cameroon government has the tendency that nobody rises to speak against them, because when you speak truth to them, they hunt you down, they kill you, or you end up in exile. That is exactly what happened to Honorable Wirba. Because Honorable Wirba mentioned the rape of university students, the helicopter gunships that were used against peaceful protesters, teachers who came out just to protest and ask for better conditions, lawyers. And this, they rose against him for daring to question the atrocities of the Cameroon military in Ambazonia. He was bold, and he reminded them that they had earlier called us 2 cubes of sugar, but that 2 cubes of sugar would rise to defend itself. And because of that, Honorable Wirba was pushed, he was haunted, and he was almost killed before he fled to the United Kingdom.
People can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are 2 Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking the government bench of Cameroon, who is? That you rape our children. My brother's daughter has been raped in Boya. I swear to you, the government of this country, does the president of this country know that the governors and the DOs and all the administrators you have sent to West Cameroon are out there behaving exactly like an army of occupation? Our people have nowhere to go. We have made all the efforts. Our ancestors and our forefathers trusted you to go into a gentleman's agreement that 2 people who considered themselves brothers could go to live together. If this is what you show us after 55 years, then those who are saying that we should break Cameroon are right. They are correct. The people of West Cameroon cannot be your slaves. The people of West Cameroon are not, you did not conquer them in war. If this is what you are saying that we should live in, I say simply, no, it will not work. How do you have an army that's supposed to protect children, step out there, beat them, and rape some? It is not heard of in any country. This is the 21st century, and anybody who does that and cannot be willing for his government to pay the price, we will exact it on you. Because you are making us believe that we went to the wrong place. What is there to say? I want the world to know and to have it on record that we have made efforts. I have sat with ministers and listened to them talk. The first one was the then Minister of Justice, Amadou Ali, 10 years ago. And I took my time, drove from Kombo to Yaoundé to tell him something is brewing out there. This thing that you people are sending gendarmes to beat people up and say all of these things, there is pain in West Cameroon. And as Minister of Justice, be very careful. What happens there? And he turned around, looked at me, and told me, Mr. Wirba, it is your people who choose to come here. He is alive. He told me. Last week, I went to see the Minister of Higher Education, Professor Famindongo, and I told him, the problems in Cameroon, the problem we have in West Cameroon, is the problem that will bring down Cameroon. If you do not handle it well, you will not know Cameroon as it is in a few months or in a few years. When people have had pent-up anger and pain, humiliation, for over 50 years, when it bursts out, you will never be able to control it. And I told him. And simply what he asked me was, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire? Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down. And we have no need for that. We don't have any need for that in the 21st century. I was one of the believers in a unified Cameroon. And I want to tell this House that what has happened to those children in Buea University and in Bamenda has convinced me that the people who say Cameroon should go in two parts are correct. And there are more and more of us out there who now believe that it is the ultimate end. I listened the other night, an offer of 1,000 jobs, an offer of 2 billion francs for lay schools, and I laughed at myself. Are my people slaves? So you now take them to be your dogs, that you can beat and wound and maim, break their bones, then throw a piece of meat for them to fight over. It has to end. If we, people of West Cameroon, have to continue doing what we are doing, it is because we believe that the more is always the merrier. When you have more people, you have more chances of surviving in life. If the more people who are the people of East Cameroon have proven to us that our blood means nothing, then it is time for us to say it will soon be over. I want to give you a quote here in this house that I borrowed from the American liberators. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. The people of West Cameroon have a duty to resist your oppression. I call it oppression because of what I've seen in the field. Let me quote you another two instances. 3 weeks ago, there was an incident in Bangolan, which is a neighboring village to Jakiri, where I come from. And I don't know what it was about, and a gendarme officer was killed. And the forces of law and order, under the instructions of the SDO of Ngokitunya, move into Jakiri, a neighboring village, and take away 100 men. Just beat them up, break their bones, and then just leave them there. And I went to that place where he took these people, and I told him, Mr. SDO, you are going to release my people. He sent soldiers to me, and one of them told me, I said, I am the representative of these people because I'm a parliamentarian. And the guy, young man, turned around and asked me, Et puis quoi? On n'est pas ici à Yaoundé. And he drew a line on the ground to tell me, if you cross here, you will see the consequences. Unfortunately for him, I happen to be a descendant of the warriors, so nobody draws a line before me. And I crossed, and I told him, shoot me. I told the SDO, release my people. In 12 hours, he released them. But some are still lying in the hospital. They beat and kicked a woman and she miscarried, a pregnant woman. And nobody can question this. That is the reason in this master plan to finish our culture and our people. You have chosen that every single administrator or every commander of the army is from East Cameroon. That is why they sit there and they can kill the people without remorse. This has to end. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat this quote. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. We, the people of West Cameroon, will resist you, and if you want to take that territory by force, you will kill to the last man before you take it. And you can start from me today. You can start from me. It has to end. Somebody has to know that this is not how you treat a people. 50 years is too long. 50 years is a very, very long time. And we come here and sit just talking about the budget. You normalize murder. You normalize rape. Mr. Speaker, I am sorry to tell you that this is part of the resistance. You will hear me to the end. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. It is my duty to defend my people. You will not stop me because of lack of time. Or if you want to, you can call your brutal gendarmes to come and kill me here. I will not. I will not. I want you to hear this, Mr. Speaker, that my people are suffering, and that the cube of sugar that was defined in this house, are you just angry, Mr. Speaker, that the person you considered your slave, a slave has risen in the master's house and is asking a question? I have, Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you, this is part of my resistance, and you will hear me to the end. Bring the brutal soldiers who raped our daughters to take me out of here. I will say it to my end. I will say it to the end. There is nothing you can do to me. I'm wondering whether His Excellency the President of the Republic knows that the governors and the DOs are behaving exactly when they are posted to West Cameroon as colonial masters. When they abuse people and insult them and do all they have done, we have to resist, and we have to tell you our people will not be brought down because we came into this union as equal partners. Yes, sir. And I am done. And I am done. And we will resist. And there is nothing you can do to stop us, because this is part of our culture that we inherited. You people who fear every administrator and every ruler, we challenge our rulers, we take them to task, and that is why they are accountable. Thank you very much.
We saw videos of other members of parliament who rose up to protest against the brutality in Ambazonia, the atrocities of the military in Ambazonia. And all of them, most of them lost their jobs. All of the others were threatened, others were killed. And this is the government that claims to respect international law, that claims to be a signatory to many international human rights treaties, conventions, and even to the point where Cameroon sits as the president, Cameroon's sit as president of the United Nations General Assembly during this time as we speak. It's even a member of the United Nations Human Rights Committee. It is absurd to even think that an authoritarian regime like Cameroon, known for its brutality, known for its gross human rights violations, will be allowed to sit at the very heart of human rights, will be allowed to sit and make policies and make decisions at the very organization that was set up to prevent this kind of atrocities from happening in the war, after the war was. It is a shame. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I am bringing you back to the videos because when we say there's a genocide going on in Ambazonia, people think that we just come out on the social media to cry foul and make false alarms when there is nothing happening. This again is a video of Honorable Forbi Nchinda Simon, who again dared to speak up after so many people have spoken and there was no action taken. And if you see the way he spoke, an honorable member of the parliament, speaking with so much fright in him, speaking with so much fear because he knows what will happen to him next. Either he will be haunted like Honorable Wirba was haunted, like others who lost their jobs, like others whose family remain who are now in a permanent house arrest, who cannot speak anymore. Because when you speak against the government of Cameroon, you become a threat to Cameroon. They haunt you, they connive against you, they conspire in any way possible to bring you down. They make sure to instill fear in you in such a way that you don't have a right to speak. You cannot speak anymore. They threaten your life, your family, your wife, your children, your extended family, and they do everything to stop you from traveling. They do everything to just decapitate you. And this is what Cameroon does. It is known for its notoriety. Cameroon is known for its evil. Honorable Wirba, Honorable Forbi Nchinda Simon dared again to speak. He spoke truth in Cameroon's parliament, templing with fear. Yes, he trembled with fear as he laid out the horrors perpetrated by the military in Ambazonia, by Cameroon military sent or stationed in Ambazonia. His voice quivered under the weight of knowing what happens to those who spoke out before him. Before him was Honorable Wirba, like I said earlier. Not just Honorable Wirba who raised the alarm, other members of parliament raised the alarm, took their inspiration from Honorable Wirba's speech, and today they suffer the consequences for daring to speak in the house where law is made. Policies are drafted and implemented and adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Cameroon we are talking about. Because when you speak truth, you are haunted like a criminal until you fled or you flee the country. And this is what happened to Honorable Wirba. He was haunted for months and months and months until he fled for safety to the United Kingdom. The courage of Honorable Wirba exposed the regime that silenced dissent, not with dialogue, but with violence and terror. Because this is what they do. They silence the voices of dissent. We know how the freedom of speech is not a go area in Cameroon. They pretend that there is freedom of speech in Cameroon, but we know even how the press is censored. When you speak, when you are a press organ and you speak boldly and frankly about what is happening in Cameroon, oh, you are in for a treat. That press house is going to be banned. It's going to be banned from speaking. War does not agree with us that there has been a genocide in Ambazonia, or there is an ongoing genocide in Ambazonia. This is a member of Parliament speaking on the current genocide in Ambazonia. Let us now listen to both Honorable Wirba and Honorable Forbi Nchinda, who spoke, and other members of Parliament who came out and listed chronologically of their own appeals that they've done within the Parliament, wrote to the president of he who controls the Parliament, and reported the continuous killing in Ambazonia, and they did nothing. He came back as a reminder to remind them that this is what is happening, and yet they do nothing. And I am happy because they've listed the numbers of people killed and what the military is doing within Ambazonia, so that the world will know that indeed there is a genocide taking place in Ambazonia. And also to refute what the useless ministers like Atanganji, who come out to say there is no war in Ambazonia. Let the world know that this is what is happening. It didn't come from me. It didn't come from any other activists on the social media. It came from a reputable member of Cameroon's parliament who had enough of what the military was doing in Ambazonia. The rape, the killing, the maiming, the burning down of communities, the destruction of properties, killing of even live animals, and everything that has breath in it. They kill it. So let us watch and see what and hear what he said during this session.
Your Excellency, the Minister Delegate in charge of Defense, I pay you my respects. Right Honorable Speaker, if I take the floor, it is not the first time, and on many of these occasions we have been to draw attention to what we've referred to as the problems of the Northwest and Southwest, but today particularly as concerns the Ministry of Defense. The original question I sent to you, sir, had 4 points on it. The question concerned the prisoners that were arrested in the Northwest and Southwest, their numbers, the treatment that were given them, and where they were being held. It concerned the soldiers that were sent to the Northwest and Southwest, not only as at the time when we were expecting that there would have been policing officers, we got military officers. That's the question that was sent to you about a state of occupation, an army of occupation. That was the second point. The third point was about the punishment that would have been meted out to the soldiers who didn't follow your instructions. And the third was the general violence and the climate of violence that was developing in the Northwest and Southwest as a result of the increased military presence and the use of live bullets and so. That was 9 months ago, sir. and with your permission, I would like to bring you up to date, because the situation has evolved significantly. And I would count on you, on your indulgence, to bring the House up to date too on these issues, because they are current, they are happening today, as opposed to what happened 9 months ago. The first situation, sir, is that as of today we are talking, you yourself, you gave us the figure of 84 soldiers that had died as of end of May. We are certain that there are more today. It's a disaster for our own soldiers to be dying in the process of killing their own brothers. As we were losing soldiers, our own estimate is that we have lost more than 2,000 civilians in the process. There's an estimate of about 170 villages that have been wiped out from the face of the globe, in what you call in French, rien ne bouge. It's a scorched earth policy. We have 120,000 refugees. We have counted about 9 camps in Nigeria where they're located. We don't know what your own figures are. And more than 200,000 internally displaced people. Most of us in our houses in Yaoundé, in Douala, Bafoussam, we have received overwhelming numbers of compatriots who are running away from a war zone. What you're seeing, sir, is a genocide that is taking place. At the same time, there are curfews that are being put in. Citizens are being arrested for no reason outside the curfew, and they have to pay significant sums of money, up to 250,000, to the army before they can be released. That, you will tell us more about it. That's in the form of ransoms and everything. We are now entering certain domains, because in times of war, you don't know what is fact and what is fiction anymore. The kind of information we are getting, which can only be authenticated from your high officer, is that the French soldiers are already in the northwest. We saw pictures of some of them. They were coming with dogs to fight. That missiles are being used, surface-to-surface missiles, with a range of anything between 1.5 kilometers to 15 kilometers. A pregnant woman was dead, was shot by one of those missiles. We are told that helicopter gunships are being used, and you know the indiscriminate nature of the killing that can take place when you use a helicopter gunship, just as it happens when you use a missile. We are told that the drones that the Americans gave to be used to fight the Boko Haram are being used for their heat-seeking searches of people, that they are being used in the northwest and southwest. Again, it's the domain where I would like you to clarify the public opinion. And at the same time, we are told that chemical weapons are being used. These are all elements of genocide, the numbers and the tactics of warfare. You are in front of the people's representatives, and it is time you tell us what is actually happening. I don't want to go into the economy because it's not in your domain, but as you know, the economy has gone to the dogs. I mean, the northwest and southwest have essentially come to a stop. One domain which is bothersome is the domain of health. Because what is happening is that the army has moved into the hospitals and has started threatening the doctors. Any doctor who treats anybody from the war front is the subject of a threat by the army. And the doctors and nurses now are refusing to treat the people. I give you the case of last night in Batibo, where the pharmacy was broken into and 38 million worth of vaccines were destroyed. And right now, people themselves going to the hospital, citizens going to hospitals, they don't have access to the care because the doctors and nurses are afraid of their lives. They are under threat from the army. Sir, this is roughly a sketch of what's going on. I am addressing myself to the Minister of Defense, Minister Delegate of Defense, and the information I have is to the effect that you are one of our finest products from ENAM, therefore one of our finest brains. And in the course of the reflections that we're going to have, one of the reflections we're going to have, sir, is what lessons have we learned from Rwanda? Because after Rwanda, the world said, never again. And here we are now, phenomenon repeating itself. Never again. As I'm talking to you right now, people who were involved are still being arrested to be tried. Again, within the same framework of reflections, what have we learned from Nuremberg, the trials of Nuremberg, about the responsibilities in wartime? The lessons are clear. We have a responsibility to a civilian population, just as we have responsibilities to military, to combatant personnel. International humanitarian law on that is very, very clear. And that is where I'm calling on you to make sure that humanitarian law is being respected, as you know it should be. And I will quote your communication officer who said, we have a professional army. I would like to believe him. And even if they are 40, you as the key person, you have corrections to make. I see your role, sir. I have never been a Minister of Defense, but I see your role as twofold. The first part of your role is to advise Mr. Biya, because Mr. Biya is commander of the armed forces. He takes the decisions which you must carry out. And you must advise him with these realities. The second part of your responsibility, as I see it, again, I might be wrong. I've never been a Minister of Defense, and believe you me, I don't, it's too difficult for me. But it's the control of your troops, the instructions you give them. The instructions you give them, especially when they are going against Cameroonians. I would like to remind you, if there is a famous war theoretician who said, war is too serious a matter to be left in the sole hands of the army. That's where you and I politicians come in. War is too serious a matter to be left in the sole hands of the army. We must put into the minds of our soldiers the responsibility for life. Obviously the responsibility for the nation. Yes, but the responsibility for life. That is why I'm talking about responsibility, and more responsibility. So, right now you are talking about humanitarian gestures, which a priori would be very good when I see soldiers of the B going out to hand over help to villages in this area. A priori it's very good. But what is actually happening? Their first reaction when they see a soldier is to run and hide, because they know. And who is to tell them that these soldiers are not coming to get information during the day to kill them at night? So our first responsibility before we begin any humanitarian is a ceasefire. A ceasefire. I would insist that it be a bilateral ceasefire. Work on getting a ceasefire so that the humanitarian gestures can get into place. While you're doing that, sir, and it's something that is not being done now, we must cultivate the language of peace. You must cultivate the language of peace. Once you begin to refer to some persons as dogs or goats, or as secessionists or terrorists, I think they will listen better if you say, my dear brother, let's meet on the table tomorrow to talk. Let me remind you again that it is not a sign of weakness to talk to your brother. Far from it, it's a sign of strength. It is not a sign of strength for a man full of muscles to beat his wife because he has the muscles. It's a sign of weakness. That man with the strength and everything faced with this in front of this woman would have many other techniques of convincing her, and believe you me, those techniques exist. And love is one of them. So, sir, this is the reality of Cameroon as it is today. As I said, I may be wrong, and you have the responsibility of passing the message to your troops. Mr. Biya must begin to talk. He must talk to his brothers. There must be an atmosphere of peace accompanied by a language of peace. If you don't mind, I'll remind you that the last time you were in front of this assembly, there were some rather bellicose words you used. I would pray you, sir, to begin the language of peace. And that said, I would hope that we get to the table very soon so that we can keep Cameroon one where our brothers will not be killing each other. I thank you, Mr. Minister of Defense. I thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you have all seen and you've heard from these honorable members of Cameroon Parliament, from Honorable Wirba to Honorable Forbi Nchinda Simon, and other members of the Parliament who also came up and protested with peace plan to call Cameroon's government attention to the brutality of its military station in Ambazonia. Why is the military station in Ambazonia if there is no war in Ambazonia? People of Ambazonia are not violent by nature. Yeah, the people of Ambazonia are not violent by nature. For decades, they have sought peaceful solutions. And we have seen this demonstrated in different ways. We saw how the teachers came out on the street with placards demanding for change. We saw the lawyers came out just demanding for a change in the legal system. We saw our parents came out on the 22nd of this, September with peace plans demonstrating their dissatisfaction of what was happening in the territory. How the children who came out to protest ended up being shot with helicopter gunships and grenades, live bullet flying left and right. And we have all of these reports by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and others. They are all out there in the internet. So Ambazonians are not brutal or violent in nature. They do not incite violence. They don't. But Cameroon, on the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, Cameroon's brutal military campaign have pushed many of them to the wall. Yes, Cameroon brutal military campaigns have pushed most Ambazonians to the wall. They have been left with no choice but to rise in self-defense, which, of course, is exercising their universal right enshrined in international law. Even in the United Nations Charter, every people have a right to defend themselves, the right to external self-determination. Yet, instead of holding Cameroon accountable to these atrocities, the global community has turned a blind eye, emboldening the regime to continue its reign of terror in Amazonia. People have protested about Cameroon's genocide in Ambazonia. They've called on international organs. They've gone before the United Nations. They've gone before the White House. They've gone to different embassies that have consulates, countries that have embassies and consulates in Cameroon. They've spoken to diplomats of different type, and nobody is saying anything. They remain silent at the interest, at the detriment of the people of Ambazonia for their own selfish interests. What is more baffling is the fact that even after they made a slogan after Rwanda, that never again would the world sit idly by and watch another genocide happen, they have sat idly by while Cameroon murder in the most gruesome manner the people of Ambazonia. Young men in Ambazonia are a target of Cameroon. If you are young in Ambazonia, you are automatically a target of Cameroon because they assume every young man in Ambazonia is a fighter, a freedom fighter in Ambazonia. They shoot and kill. This is the life of the people of Ambazonia. You go to bed, you're not sure you will rise the next morning. You're walking through the street, you're not sure you'll go back home because bullets are flying left and right. And this is what Cameroon does and does best. It didn't start in 2016. It started way back in 1961 when its military forces went into Cameroon, into southern Cameroons without any authorization, entered another country and committed massacres. This is Cameroon. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear people saying, oh, Ambazonians are violent people. I say it again. Ambazonians are not violent by nature. They are never violent. If you go down memory lane and history, and you look at what happened even before unification, during the independence of Southern Cameroon, throughout the fake federation, and then after all of that unification, and then back to Cameroon and all of this till today, you will see that Cameroon has repeatedly violated international borders and entered in another country and commit massacres and murders, and no one ever held Cameroon responsible. And because nobody held Cameroon responsible in 1961, Cameroon has continued its brutality, its killing spree in Ambazonia till today. And the war has adamantly remained silent. And watch as people get killed, women killed, pregnant women killed, children that have never seen the light of the day killed in the womb, children murdered and set ablaze. We all knew what happened in Gagbo. We've seen the Bali massacres and many others. And this, the international community has turned a blind eye to it. We saw how baby Mata was brutally murdered. A 7 to 8 months old baby. We've seen women, pregnant women, killed with children in their wombs. These are crimes that will never happen in other countries and the world will sit quiet, or in other continents. In Europe, it will not happen and the world will be quiet. They will take over the social media space and they will be calling on international bodies, human rights organizations. They'll be calling on the United Nations to rise and invoke the responsibility to protect, because that was the purpose for implementing or for adopting the responsibility to protect principle. But when it comes to other countries, they close their eyes. They are more focused on the natural resources, diplomatic relations, and political interest, and all of that at the expense of human life. Cameroon, or Cameroon's government, has failed entirely to hold its military accountable for these heinous crimes committed in southern Cameroon in Ambazonia. Soldiers who burn villages, execute civilians, and use chemical weapons or faced with no consequences at all by the Cameroon military. They arrest civilians and judge them in military court, and yet their own military who commit atrocities within Ambazonia go scot-free, walk on the street like free men, like nothing happened. Hey, Merry Christmas. Hey, let's all go home and have a beer. Instead of Cameroon to punish or hold their military accountable, they have repeatedly told the world that there is no conflict in Ambazonia, or there is nothing at all happening. Killed and caused so much atrocity in Ambazonia, like the Munja. Instead of the government to punish them, what we have seen is that Cameroon instead rewards them with promotion and shield them from scrutiny. From the international community, from activists, from journalists who try to interview them to confirm what they've been told by eyewitnesses within the communities. Rather, Cameroon promotes them to higher positions and give them more license to kill at will. This impunity, ladies and gentlemen, this impunity is a green light for continuous atrocities in Ambazonia. You know, the most disturbing part of it is that even the hypocrisy of this government is staggering. How a nation responsible for genocide chair the United Nations Assembly is what you and I cannot explain. How this country was able to convince the whole global community to the point that they allow Cameroon to sit at the United Nations Human Rights Committee and also to chair the United Nations General Assembly, claiming to uphold the very principles it desecrates daily, is what is still unfathomable with me. How can the war allows Cameroon to weaponize victimhood while its hands drip with the blood of Ambazonia? Cameroon parades itself at the corridor of power, claiming or pretending to be the victim in this event or this occasion, whereas its military burn, kill, gather young men and kill them, bury them in mass graves. Not just that, they kill people and set their corpses ablaze. We have all of this recorded by reputable international human rights organizations. And Cameroon has repeatedly prevented international journalists like the BBC and other international media houses from entering into Ambazonia to conduct interviews, because they know maybe they cannot corrupt those ones. They can corrupt a few, but they've prevented all of these journalists, independent journalists, researchers to even come into Ambazonia and conduct research on the current crisis in Ambazonia. And yet, they shield all of these atrocities, convince the United Nations to the point that they allow them to chair the very general assemblies that sit to determine the future of the war. It's unbelievable and unfathomable. Cameroon has truly, how the war allows Cameroon to weaponize victimhood, while its hands are dripping with blood. The blood of young Ambazonian children in the womb, women and children suffering in different bushes across Ambazonia. Even during this time, during the dry season, the wet season in Ambazonia, they are in the bush. They live in tents. Women give birth in the bush. Women who go through their menstrual period do not have pads. They use leaves. You see, for people to ignore these atrocities and allow Cameroon to sit at the United Nations hem to preside over the General Assembly is what it's heartbreaking and unbelievable of what they put in papers, the hypocrisy of the West, the hypocrisy of these institutions come out to tell us to value human rights, value human dignity, to never go against anybody because of their race, their nationality, of their language, of their ethnic group where they belong, of being a minority, and yet you dine and wine with the biggest monster in the world that feeds on the blood of human beings in Ambazonia, on the blood of children. The United Nations should be ashamed of itself. And every country that sits in that assembly, that knows what is happening in Ambazonia, and yet dine with Cameroon, they should all be reminded that they are accomplices to the killings in Ambazonia. The African, whatever that thing is called, African AU, whatever that thing is, African organization or organization, sits there and does nothing. The African Union sits there and does nothing within its own borders. And yet, they are quick to be concerned about what happened in Israel and Palestine. They are concerned about what happens in Ukraine and Russia. They are concerned about what happened in Kenya. They are concerned about what is happening in Yemen, in Serbia, in Afghanistan. Are we kidding ourselves? What level of hypocrisy can these world leaders portray in the eyes of all? Africa is sinking. African leaders careless. They are more concerned about continents or countries far off from their reach that don't even care if they exist. African children are dying on a daily basis. Children have been out of school for almost 8 years. The African Union is not concerned. The United Nations is not concerned. The so-called UNESCO is not concerned. They are more concerned of the minerals in Ambazonia. They are more concerned about the resources of Ambazonian political interest, political aggrandizement, and all of this, and why children wallow in pain, in suffering, in starvation, sleeping in bushes, and people, and the United Nations sits and cheer Cameroon for cheering it. What are we talking about? Ladies and gentlemen, what are we? Where is our humanity? How many more children must be killed in Ambazonia? How many more children must be killed in Ambazonia before the world will open its eyes to the reality on the ground? To see Cameroon truly for who they are. When Gbagbo happened, we cried out to the world, and what did the United Nations say? They said Cameroon should set up an independent inquiry team to go and investigate the Gbagbo massacre. How on earth do you call the same person who committed the atrocities to investigate and give you report on what happened that they committed? How can we be so hypocritical to think that the world sat and told Cameroon to go and investigate its own crime? How can you possibly get a neutral report on this? The Human Rights Watch have called out on Cameroon's hypocrisy on this. The Amnesty International spoke against this. They've not held those that committed those crimes in Gbagbo accountable. Recent massacres, arrests, torture. The hypocrisy of this world is so palpable. How many more children, I ask, must be killed, must be sacrificed, must be used as sacrificial lamb by Cameroon monster before the world will realize the genocide in Ambazonia and rise to fulfill its own obligation? Ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to this video, my prayer is that you will call on out leaders of the world, the African Union, the European Union, the Council of Europe, United Nations, and whoever cares to hear that there is an ongoing genocide in Ambazonia. Our children are dying on a daily basis. Cameroon continues to feed on the blood and the flesh of our children, while its officials parade themselves in the corridors of power pretending to be victims, whereas we all know its notoriety. We know the heinous crimes and the atrocities Cameroon is committing in Ambazonia. The CAT report reveals it. It is alarming, and I pray that you can all go and read the CAT report on Cameroon. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is time for the international community to act. The atrocities in Ambazonia must no longer be ignored. Human rights lawyers across the world, I call them to rise and act. People still work pro bono these days. You must not be paid to stand against injustice. You must not be paid to stand against brutality on the oppressed. Allow your humanity to save the lives of the children of Ambazonia. Let the Cameroon's military that is stationed in Ambazonia return to its country and allow Ambazonia to function the way it was before 1961. Cameroon's crimes against humanity are a stain to our collective conscience, and the silence of the global leadership is complicity. Even you, who is a human rights lawyer, you who speaks about Cameroon, who praises Cameroon, I want you to know that you are an accomplice to genocide, the killing of children, the burning of elderly persons, the killing and burning of youths in Ambazonia. The word never again after Rwanda. The word never again was not just a mere word. It was not just a slogan. It was a call to responsibility. It was a commitment to uphold that word by war leaders. It wasn't just a mere slogan that you can just go and say, hey, what's up? What are you doing? How are you today? How was work today? That was not what Never Again meant when they came out after Rwanda. They must not wait for 850 to 1 million Ambazonians to be killed before they realize that another Rwanda is brewing in West Africa, in Ambazonia. War leaders must rise to their feet and prevent yet another Rwanda, because it will be so unacceptable for war leaders to come out and declare Never Again the second time. Don't allow Cameroon's pretentious nature to deceive you that Cameroon is a victim. Cameroon is an oppressor. Cameroon is the perpetrator of evil, killings, and brutality. And it is happening in Ambazonia right under the watch of war leaders who have decided to turn a blind eye and pretend that nothing is happening in West Africa. But if it hits Europe, they all rise to their feet and say, never in Europe. We must not be discriminative. Justice has no color. It has no background. It has no race. It has no nation. It only believes in humanity. My dear brothers and sisters, lovers of justice, freedom fighters across the globe, ladies and gentlemen, if you are a justice defender, if you are a human rights activist, if you are a freedom fighter, if you love freedom, if you believe in humanity, this video is for you. This video is not just a call for justice, it is a call for action. We need action in Ambazonia. It is a plea for the world to hold Cameroon accountable for its crimes in Ambazonia. It is a demand for the United Nations, the African Union, the Council of Europe, the European Union, and any other organization of the world, and all global leaders to intervene before the situation worsens, before we gather again to say never again. Ambazonia will not stand alone. The voices of the oppressed must echo until justice is served. If you are an oppressed nation, individual suffering what Ambazonians are suffering in the hands of La République du Cameroon, you are called upon when you watch this video to rise, to speak out and call Cameroon out, and call Cameroon's atrocities in Ambazonia, and call on war leaders to intervene in Ambazonia and stop the mass killings, the mass graves, the burning of our homes, the displacement, the internal displacement, and all the atrocities, the rape. The most heinous one is when military force a young man to rape his own mother in the sight of his siblings and father. It is an abomination. Ladies and gentlemen, arise. Let justice be served. The truth about Cameroon is laid bare for the world to see. We saw the CAT report. We've seen many Amnesty International videos report, Human Rights Watch reports. We've seen all of these forensic reports about Cameroon's atrocities in Ambazonia. We must not continue to be quiet. The ones at the CAT committee were so alarming that the Italian representative could not even express himself well. Ladies and gentlemen, we call on you to rise and speak. I want to say a big thank you to you all who will be watching these videos, I hope what has been detailed in this video will touch you such that you will forward this video, share with the right authorities, share with those that need to hear, so they can hear what is happening in Cameroon, read what is happening in Cameroon, and speak out on behalf of the people of Ambazonia. As we celebrate Christmas, let's not forget that there are children in Ambazonia who for the past 8 years have not been able to celebrate Christmas because they are in the bushes. So many of them in refugee camps. Those that are still wondering about looking for where to even hide because their homes have been razed to the ground. So I call on you as you enter the spirit of Christmas, as we celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I hope that the spirit of Christmas will cause you to share this video, to listen again and research more on the atrocities in Ambazonia and call Cameroon out, so that Cameroon can be held accountable for its crimes in Ambazonia, so that Cameroon can stop pretending to play victimhood across the world and accusing Ambazonians to be the violent ones, when Cameroon is indeed the oppressor and the perpetrator of violence in Ambazonia, not just in the last 8 years, but since 1961. God bless you once again. From my family to yours, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Thank you.